So we're on to episode 8 of season 2. This one is called One Breath, and Scully is back.
Yay! That is the
thankfully.
Sound of the inner workings of Graham's head.
Yes, exactly. So, One Breath, Brian. Do you want to kick us off with the opening scene?
Yeah, go on. So we get something we don't really tend to get in the X-Files, because obviously we normally start with a teaser that kind of relates very specifically to like the villain of the week or whatever the government conspiracy is that's going on. Mm-hmm. This is a flashback, and it's a story that is being told by Mrs. Scully, Scully's mum, about Dana when she was a child. And it's the story of when she was out in the woods with her brothers, and they started taking pot shots at this snake with their pistols, their rifles, little air rifles. And in order to kind of join in with them, she took part and accidentally shot the snake. And the snake ended up dying in her hands, and she cried over it, she mourned it, she became very saddened by it. And we cut then to Mrs. Scully. We kind of break away from these flashback moments to Mrs. Scully telling the story. Mm-hmm. And they're at Scully's headstone. They're getting her headstone ready. And Mrs. Scully essentially says that she feels now the way Scully did when she killed that snake.
Yeah. I quite like this opening. It gives you it feels almost like a bit of a fabled parable kind of story, the way it's filmed as well. A little bit hazy outside with Scully and the snake, and how she wished she could bring it back, and how she cried and prayed for it to come back, type of thing. And then it's kind of juxtaposed with the tombstone, which I wasn't expecting. I didn't know what they were there doing, so when it's unveiled at the start, I was like, oh my goodness. But yeah, effectively, she's going to come back for another few seasons anyway, so yeah. You're like, this could be a bit presumptuous. But I don't get a sort of time scale here. I don't know how much time's passed from Scully disappearing to...
Well, it's definitely been at least a few weeks, because obviously we had the vampire case that Mulder kind of went off on. So it's at the very least it's been a few weeks. Now, I think they do date it at the start, but I never pay attention to those things, to be honest.
Well, I'm obviously the same there, Brian, because I didn't pick it up either. Yeah. But yeah, it's a very different opening. It's almost treated like a kind of sombre opening, and then we get that headstone, and then we get the theme music. And then, wouldn't you believe it, Brian?
Well, first of all, my one little bitter pill about this scene is that I just wish they could have got a little girl to play the young Dana Scully who could cry convincingly. Because that's some pretty bad acting, I've got to say, on her part. I mean, bless her, she's only young, but yeah, it was a bit
but it kind of fits in with the X-Files aesthetic, because it usually does have like somebody that's just terrible in every episode, just like a small person that just does a wee line or two, who's usually pretty bad. So it's kind of, they're keeping that run going.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, what were you going to say?
Scully lives. Brian, Scully lives.
She does. She lives. But that's not until after the opening credits. Because before we get to that, we actually have Mulder sat in his apartment watching porn. Yay! What's the one thing any self-respecting guy does when he's waiting for his beloved to come back? He watches porn.
Yes. Now, we've seen things that hinted towards this in previous episodes. Let us not forget the scantily clad woman and power tools calendar. So Mulder's all maybe he's studying an X-File case.
Yeah, whatever. But anyway,
triple X-File case.
Interrupting his session is a phone call. His meditation, is a phone call telling him to get his ass to the hospital quick, because Scully is there. She's alive. She's been found. Mulder, we see Mulder running down the corridor. He gets there, and he flips out. The doctor, who's kind of looking after Scully, comes over to try and speak to him, and Mulder just flips out. He wants to know where she's come from, where she was found, why she's just magically turned up in the hospital, who's behind it. At one point, he accuses the doctor. He says, "If you're behind this, if you're working with them, I will find out." And yeah, he wants blood. He is absolutely pissed, to say the least.
He is pumped up and ready to go. He's the kind of guy that never finished his meditation. He is just rage personified, and he's kind of lashing out. And again, it's like, I understand why Mulder's doing it, but I don't feel that it's the true Mulder that we've seen. You know, you think he would take in a little bit more of the information, or even be relieved that Scully is back. He just seems to fly off the handle without checking on her.
Well, I mean, I just think it's
a release.
It's a release, yeah. He's, and he is angry. Like, if she was going to come back, he wants her to come back, like, properly. But it's almost like he's having his face rubbed in the dirt, because she's been brought back to him, but in this condition where, she's in a coma that she might never wake up from. So yeah, there's a lot of anger there. There's a lot of he wants revenge. Really, he wants to take it out on whoever did this to her. But if she's just going to turn up in a hospital, and the people responsible are never going to rear their heads, there's no catharsis there. There's nothing to There's no justice. And I think that's what's upsetting him. That's what's really getting him. And he's been processing this for weeks. And we saw in the last episode, an episode that a lot of people don't really like, because Mulder isn't really Mulder in that. And we discussed in that there's a reason Mulder isn't Mulder. It's because Scully's not there. He's taking it hard. He doesn't know how to deal with it. He can't process it. And suddenly she reappears, and all of that emotion finally just comes pouring out, and this poor doctor, unfortunately, becomes the brunt of that. So I really liked this scene, actually.
It's just, for me, I'm as frustrated and as angry as Mulder, because Scully's back, but she's in a coma. It's like, you can have her, but you can't have all of her.
So Mulder gets dragged away by some security guards, basically. And the next time we see him, it's a little bit calmer. The doctor is talking to Mrs. Scully, with Mulder looking rather sheepish and embarrassed, dare I say. And they don't know how she got there or what is even wrong with her. But her will says that she doesn't want to live in this condition. And Mulder's signature is on there as a witness. So she's basically got a do not resuscitate order. But I think even more so than that, it's like it goes so far as, actually, if she's in a coma, she just wants the machine switching off. She doesn't want to lie in a bed for years on end while the family wonder if she's ever going to wake up. What did you think of that? Especially when you found out that Mulder is the one who signed the witness order. Yeah,
it's one of those moments, isn't it? But it's only, and I think you'd be forgiven. Well, I think the first thing you jump to is nobody's going to have that in their will. But Scully is a medical professional, and she's the kind of person that would be aware of what that kind of life would be. And you can buy that she would have something like that put into her will.
And people do have that in the will. People have those kind of agreements. They exist, so it's not uncommon.
No, absolutely not. And it just puts more weight onto Mulder.
It's just a punch in the balls, really, isn't it? It's like much, she's been brought back, but she's in such a condition that actually Mulder's signature could very end up killing her. It's almost like he's going to be the final. Yeah, that's talk about kicking you while you're down. Right, okay, so then we get to Scully's sister, Melissa. So we cut to this scene, rather bizarre scene, because let's just face it, Melissa, she ain't Scully.
No.
She ain't Dana. Dana and Melissa couldn't be further apart from one another if they tried. So Melissa's got the crystals out. She's kind of doing this weird little ritual with some crystals. And she said nice little line where she says, "I've been told not to call you Fox." She says Scully is deciding whether or not to stay or move on. She says you can feel her. And she tries to get Mulder to kind of, I don't know, cleanse her aura or some crap. I don't know. Just real bizarre. And Mulder says that he needs to do more than just wave his hands around.
I think Melissa and Dana are more alike than what you actually think, because, and I do have rationale behind this, is you see from Melissa, she is very much a woman who's believing in New Age philosophies, New Age medicine and that. She has a core belief. She believes that she's open and can hear Dana and talk to her. We've heard from Dana's mother, who had these dreams about Dana that kind of almost premonitionary type things. So there's a belief in them as well. She didn't feel dubious about them. She felt that they were a message. And then we have Dana, who's seen her father, who's seen things, who has this belief, who channels it through Christianity, but also has this belief reluctantly against otherworldly type of things, spiritual things. I think between these three women, there is a running cord between them all of belief in various things. And I think it's something that could run in the family almost. On the surface, they are different, yes, but and inside them all, they all have this core belief that I think is really strong, that Dana maybe fights against or tries to curb with rationale, whereas the other two women are more open and willing to accept it. And maybe her father was not so believing, and I think maybe a lot of Dana's personality, that side which she's shut down, is possibly an attempt to go more towards her father, because we saw in the first season episode Beyond the Sea that she was always striving, always really working hard to try and impress her father, even though she didn't go into the line of work that kind of he expected her to. There was always that need there to impress him, and you kind of I don't know about you, but I get the vibe that maybe Scully shut that side of herself down as a way of being more like her father, whereas Melissa has embraced that stuff and is a little bit more like her mother. But yeah, I mean, there's a heavy dose of Catholicism that will come into this family as we get later in the season. So that's definitely there, the whole spiritual element. But yeah, so Mulder, not too impressed with the crystals, quite frankly. Doesn't really believe, which is the bizarre thing. It's unusual.
Yeah, it's quite unusual that he's. But yeah, there you go. So we get a little scene, just kind of a cutaway almost, of Mulder and Melissa kind of stood on this little pier, and Scully is in this boat, tethered to the pier, the little pier, with some rope. Very kind of symbolic imagery as to her kind of just hanging on to life.
I mean, it's in your face. That there's no like subtlety about it, but it's awesome. It's a fantastic visual, and it really just sells it within the few seconds it's on screen. You know exactly what it's saying, even though it's lack of subtlety. But I think it's a tremendous image and one that I like.
It's a good way of representing what's going on, I think.
Absolutely.
And it also
showing, not telling.
Yeah, showing, not telling, and we can derive from that some part of Scully is still connected to the outside world, that she can maybe hear these two talking, and it's because of that. It is almost Mulder's pessimism that is stopping her from coming back. And we'll get to that later in the episode, obviously. So, but at this point, Mulder simply feels that he can't just stand there waving his hands around. So he goes home and he puts an X on the window, and he fires a little light out, and it's kind of like a little mini bat symbol.
Yeah.
So at this point, we don't quite know why he's doing this. I don't think he's done this yet.
No, this is the first time I've seen him do it.
Yeah, so this is the first time he's done this. So at this point, you're kind of like, what's going on here? Why is he doing this? But he gets up, checks his morning paper, as if he's expecting to find something in it. There's nothing there. So if you're paying attention to the rest of the season so far, I think you could gather from that maybe he was trying to call X. He was reaching out to... Well, I mean, we don't even know him as X yet. You know, this is really the first inkling to us referring to the guy as X. But there you go. No response from him. So Mulder goes back to the hospital, and once there, we get a visit from Frohickey with some flowers.
And a tux.
In a tux, yeah. He's spruced himself up for this moment. Comes to the hospital with some flowers, and notices something on Scully's chart. So it kind of needs a bit of further investigation. So we cut from there to the lone gunmen. So we have the lone gunmen, and they talk about this guy online. He's kind of like a hacker, and he's called the Thinker, refers to himself as the Thinker. And this guy, the Thinker, says that Scully's protein has branched DNA inside, which is basically it's the biological equivalent of a silicon microchip. So it's like somebody has put something in her DNA, which is at a genetic level is like a microchip, which obviously raises questions as to what is that for? Is it to track her? Is it to control her? Is it what is it? Why is it there? Who put it there? What is its purpose?
Yeah, it's good to see the lone gunman appear again. He always had a bit of levity and a bit of fun to the proceedings. In fact, I think there's a joke about how did he get the chart out of the room, and the guy says he put it down his trousers, and Mulder makes a joke about there being plenty of room down there. There's always nice interplay between these four characters as well, Mulder and the three guys. It's always nice to see them.
Even if it's not verbal, you always get, it's like when you see the way they look at each other, you always have these shifty looks, like they know something that Mulder doesn't, and they're about to tell him or whatever.
But I think you need this interplay between the guys, and you need the way they look and the way they act, because pretty much these three guys are exposition.
Yeah.
They come in to offer some information to Mulder that he needs, but it never feels like they're just giving him information, even though that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, they're Basil exposition times 3, aren't they?
Yeah.
But so Byers, which is the one in the suit, the more kind of gentry type looking one of the three, he says that actually this stuff, this branched DNA, is now inactive, but it's acting like a poison, so it's actually killing Scully.
Right.
Which obviously puts the fear of God into Mulder and makes him a bit more angry, I'd imagine. So we cut from there to Scully back in the boat, and we get this Nurse Owens, talking to her, and she's telling her to come back. So it's kind of big lady, shall we say? She's this nurse kind of trying to coax Scully to come back. Then Mulder
don't like this woman.
You don't?
Nah, there's something weird about her, right from the off. A nurse like that doesn't talk to a patient this way. I've got it in my notes here. It's just weird. It's just weird. Usually they just come in and it's just do what they need to do and go away. But this woman's like just whispering sweet nothings in her ear.
Yeah. Okay. Mulder comes in and Owens leaves, which probably just makes her more suspect to you, doesn't it? Then another nurse arrives to take some blood. And basically, there's a bit of a distraction, and this guy just steals the blood.
Mm-hmm.
Takes the blood, and Mulder pursues him down into the car park, where he comes face to face with X, and a nice conversation, bit of a tussle ensues between those two, in which Mulder essentially says, look, I called you, you didn't answer, where the hell were you? And X is essentially saying, I don't answer to you, mate, like I'm my own man, keep your nose out of this. In fact, go back, mourn Scully, she's basically dead, and stop pursuing this case because it's going to get you killed, and you don't have what it takes to see it through. What's your kind of take on this? Because you're seeing this essentially for the first time. I know you have seen this before, but it was so long ago, I'd imagine you don't really remember it. So as a first-timer, what are you...
X, I've got my notes here, and it says, I've got down that X seems like manic. He's angry. He's insulting, belittling, paranoid. He's almost like a rage of emotions. Who, again, I have this constant feeling that he just doesn't want to deal with Mulder. Mulder is a problem that he doesn't want to just have anything to do with, and I don't know if he's trying to put Mulder off because he possibly could be killed, or if he just wants him to stop so he doesn't have to deal with the ramifications that's going to come from Mulder investigating this, where he'll be forced to take action and put himself in danger. He comes across as a guy who's looking after himself, and Mulder is almost kind of threatening that. But Mulder's kind of protected, and in turn is forcing this guy to kind of look out for him when he doesn't want to. So X, I think, isn't as dubious as Deep Throat. He seems on the surface, he seems reluctant to deal with Mulder, and only does it when he is forced to.
He's happy to help Mulder if it's going to serve something for him, if it's going to serve his purposes.
But he feels like a middleman. He doesn't feel like somebody in charge, like Deep Throat did.
He doesn't feel as high up as Deep Throat. He kind of feels like he was the man under Deep Throat. Almost like Deep Throat's personal assistant. So when his boss is killed, he's then kind of thrown into the lion's den, essentially, with a bunch of other people like Deep Throat, but who don't share Deep Throat's philosophies. So then he's constantly looking over his shoulder, wondering if people are going to find out. Obviously, if Deep Throat's been killed, people are going to be looking at him. You know, we never get a clear-cut description of his relationship with Deep Throat. We never find out if he was his right-hand man or anything like that. But that's kind of the sense you get, isn't it? That he's one rung down on the ladder to what Deep Throat was, and as a result, it means he needs to be a bit more careful. It means if he gets caught, he's done for. But I do like this exchange. I like that Mulder kind of he goes after this guy in spite of what X is telling him, and he kind of pushes X away, and he's just basically saying, "Screw you, mate. Screw you. You had your chance. I asked for your help. You didn't give it me. I'm going my own way." Bye. So it's a nice little scene there. So Mulder continues to chase this guy down, kind of catches up with him. This guy gives him a bit of a beating, and he's just about to take Mulder out when X basically comes up behind him, snaps his arm, throws him on the floor, and kills him. Basically saying, "Look, you want to know what I know? You want to go to the places I've been to? This is what you got to be prepared to do." And he shoots the guy cold.
This for me is a statement. That this is saying, like, this is what I am capable of. This is what I can do. This guy was nothing. I didn't even have to look at him when I shot him. And it's kind of like almost trying to be overbearing on Mulder. It's like a control type of thing. And a thinly veiled threat. This is what I can do. If you cause me a problem like this guy did, maybe you'll be next. You
just at this point, you just don't know whose side this guy is on. So yeah, I mean, at this point, you kind of don't know whose side this guy is on, other than himself. It's just that what are his goals? Because at this point, they certainly don't seem like they're on the same page as Mulder's. Because Mulder has this evidence. He's got the blood. He's going to take it back, and X has got it. I mean, like, why they can't just draw more blood from Scully, I don't know, but but yeah, he's an interesting character. I find him to be much more interesting to watch than Deep Throat ever was, to be honest.
Right. Okay.
That's just me. I don't know how you feel about that, but
it's still fresh. It's still early days. We've only seen him a couple of times, and we'll wait and see where the character goes.
Okay.
But I'm unsure about the guy.
Yeah, he's less likable than Deep Throat, certainly. But I find him more interesting because, yeah, he's more of a threat, I feel.
Oh, definitely.
So, okay. So the doctor says that pulling the plug will most likely lead to death. So we go back into the hospital, and this is what the doctor says. Mulder clings on, says they need to run more tests to find out more about her condition, what's going on. Melissa says they should let her go, as that's what Dana wished for. And Mrs. Scully invites Mulder to join them, but he doesn't. So they're literally going to switch the machine off and let nature take its course.
Mm-hmm. And we get back to Sad Mulder again.
Sad Mulder, yeah. We're back to
Sad Mulder again.
But I mean, it's a hard decision. It's like you do kind of question why they would be so. I mean, they're just respecting their sister and their daughter's wishes, I guess. But
I think it's definitely undercut because the history that's going to come from more episodes. At the time, this could have been more powerful, but looking at it now, knowing that this is a third of the way through season 2 of 9, it steals any power or weight that it possibly could have had.
Right. Okay.
It's hard to judge in that fourth thing because ultimately she's going to pull through.
Yeah.
So we have the boat again, don't we?
We do have the boat with Nurse Owens once more. So basically, when they go in to turn the machines off, we don't get to see it. But what we do see is Scully back in the boat with Nurse Owens watching on, and the rope that is tethering the boat to the pier just snaps, and the boat just drifts off. And at that point, if you're watching this for the first time, I think you would think, that's it. They've switched the machine off, Scully's going. Mm-hmm. She's fading.
You're thinking your mum's going to have use for that headstone now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. It's somber, but again, it's back to that image again. That image is just fantastic. In your face, yes. Yeah.
And works. Something worth pointing out again, and I've pointed this out in a previous episode, is just that when I first saw this, when it aired, we didn't have reviews rife on the internet, spoilers, things like that, and Scully hadn't been in most of this season, so they very well could have killed her off. So when I was watching this for the first time, I think I didn't know, really. We'd come off the back of season 1 where they killed Deep Throat. We've not had Scully much in this, so they could. But I get where you're coming from. It obviously, they're not going to kill Scully off at this point. So, but yeah, okay. So we go to Skinner's office, and Cancer Man basically tells Skinner to sit on Mulder, keep him quiet, essentially. He lights a cigarette despite Skinner's protest before putting it out at the other side of the room, which is literally just the most anally retentive a-hole thing to do. It's like he's got no interest in having a cigarette at that point. He literally lights it up just to get under Skinner's skin and then walks to the other side of the room, and just before leaving, puts it out in the ashtray on the other side of the room. It's like, screw you. So Mulder comes in just after Cancerman exits, and Skinner questions Mulder about the hospital. But Mulder just answers every question with a question, which kind of riles Skinner up. And then Mulder's kind of like, how does it feel? How does it feel to have every question answered with a question? Which kind of gets under Skinner's skin.
Because at first you think Mulder's been manic and crazy again, but there's a plot to what he's doing.
Yeah.
You know, he's showing Skinner what it's like. And I think that's what annoys Skinner most, that he didn't notice that.
That's it. I mean, and when Mulder came into the room, you do clock a look on his face. He sees that cigarette that Cancerman has just put out over on the other side of the room, because it's, there's still smoke coming up from it. He sees it. He knows that guy has literally just been there, and he knows he's behind it. He knows he's got something to do with it, and he tells as much to Skinner. He talks about how Cancerman is to blame for Scully, and you see in the body language, you see like a little shift in Skinner, like he didn't quite expect it, like almost like, if that's true, if that guy is to blame, then I want to get to the bottom of it just as much as you do. It's all in a look in Skinner's face, and Mulder basically asks Skinner where he can find Cancerman. He wants to know where this guy lives. And Skinner implies that he can't take the law into his own hands. He says, if you weren't prepared for the risks, you shouldn't step onto the field. And Mulder says, what if I was prepared but didn't tell Scully of the risks? And Skinner, giving a final gut punch, says, then you're as much to blame for her condition as Cancerman. Which kind of really gets to the bottom of what Mulder is feeling at all this. He blames himself. So a lot of this anger he's firing at people, really a lot of it is at himself, because he sucked Scully into these X-Files. I mean, she was placed onto them to kind of debunk him, but because they got so close, he liked having her on board, and he kind of brought her into situations where actually maybe she wasn't fully aware of the risks. At least that's the way he sees it. So.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% there. And then we kind of go from there, don't we, to Scully. Yeah. Scully's and her dad.
We've got Scully lay on the table, and she receives a visit from Ahab, otherwise known as her father. They've got this Moby Dick thing where she calls him Ahab and he calls her Starbuck. But basically, he tells her to go back. So it's a vision or a moment on the other side, whatever you want to call it. So he tells her to go back, and on the outside, in the real world,
talks to.
So it's,
Yeah. Is that crazy nurse who's talking
Nurse
to her?
Owens, yeah. So we've got Nurse Owens basically telling her the same thing. Come back, your time ain't. It's not yet. You're not ready yet.
Yeah. All the way through this episode, this nurse really got to me. Really annoyed me. She just pushed my nerves. Yeah. I've been in hospitals. Nurses don't act like that.
Yeah, but she's not. I mean, we're going to get there, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to get there, but I'm just giving you my opinion at the time.
Okay, at the time.
I've made notes. Yeah, I've even got it in my notes here. Nurse Weirdo talks to Scully.
Okay. So Melissa sits with Fox, as she keeps calling him. She says Fox, Mulder. And she tells him that finding everyone responsible won't bring her back. So she can see that Mulder is kind of on this vengeance trip. He desperately wants to find who's responsible. And she says horrors await those responsible. Like maybe like a karma thing or heaven and hell, or whatever you want to call it. And Mulder says, "Well, including me." So we're proper into like self-pity Mulder now, really into that kind of Mulder. And then we get this lady who comes over to the machine. She wants to buy some cigarettes. She basically may as well just go up to Mulder and say, "Hey, check out the cigarette machine." It would be a lot simpler. But yeah, that's essentially what she does. Mulder goes over and finds a pack of Morleys, which is Cancer Man's brand. And there's a little note inside, presumably from Skinner, basically giving him Cancer Man's location.
Okay, I've got a problem here, Brian.
I've got a problem. I've got a huge problem here. Those bloody cigarettes are sealed.
Yeah, they're sealed. The
They're
note's
sealed.
inside it. So somebody's went to like a huge effort to really conceal all this.
Yeah.
Right? It's really covert, only to have some woman stand in front of Mulder and go, "Hey, you should come and look at this. It's nothing spy related or crazy covert, but you should look at this, mister."
So, yeah.
And you're like,
Man alive.
surely if somebody's watching Mulder, they're like, "Oh, come on."
It's like, do the FBI have a branch somewhere that their specific purpose is to package up Marley's cigarettes with notes inside? We need a note sending to such and such. Get us a pack of Marley's. It's like, see, like literally, you take away the fact that she has to unseal that packet, I've got no problem with the scene. Okay? But the fact that she...
I've got the problem with the women shouting across the room, because if somebody's watching Mulder, they're going to be like, "This is a trainee."
Yeah, she's like, "Morley's, not my brand. I'm just going to leave them over there for whoever else wants them. Bye." And it's like, whatever. But to me, this is the weakest scene of the episode. And I will say up front, I do actually think this is a very strong episode. But this scene, man alive... Just like it would be improved exponentially if they just didn't have to unwrap it, because
to get rid of that woman.
It means like, has Skinner gone into the Marley's cigarette factory, to the production line, put a note in, let it get sealed, then took it off the line and gone off? It makes no sense. Does he have his own private machine that can cellophane wrap these things?
Somebody just to bump into him and put a note in his pocket.
Yeah,
rather than
would have been a heck of a lot easier.
Palaver.
Man alive. Yeah, worst scene of the episode for me, easily, by far. So, but we jump from that to a very good scene, I've got to say, which is Mulder confronting Cancer Man. So we've got Cancer Man sat there watching TV, and Mulder just comes in, puts a gun to his head, starts making demands, wants to know what happened to Scully. And Cancer Man probably says more in this scene than he's said in the his entire run so far in the X-Files. What do you think of this scene?
I think I like it because it's certain things, and it's nothing to do with Mulder. This scene, it's all to do with the Cancer Man, who is living an extremely sad life.
Really sad.
It's like a small room, TV, cigarettes, ashtray, chair, one single solitary chair.
Yeah.
And I think the most terrifying thing about this is his completely calm demeanour. He's unafraid. He's not bothered. It's almost as if he's been expecting this. At some point, he's nobody to take care for. He's nothing in his life. All he has is his work, and it doesn't seem to be under any stress. He feels as if he's the one in control again.
Yeah, he's a master manipulator, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's like even with a gun to his head, he finds a way to own the situation. And Mulder asks him, "Why her? Why Scully?" And he says it's because he likes Mulder, so he kept Mulder alive. but he likes Scully too, which is why she was brought back to him. And it's like, how much of that is a lie? How much of that is truth? Is there any truth to what this guy says? And something very important that I feel he says is that he's in the game because he believes what he's doing is right. And if people knew what he knew, it would all fall apart. So you do get the sense from this that in his head, he is the hero of the story. Which I always think is very important in a villain. When you've got your main villain, your super villain, so to speak, I think, like, if you look at Marvel movies, I think Marvel movies tend to... The one criticism I think tends to get across the board with Marvel movies is weak villains.
Yeah.
And it's because their motivations are always just simply world domination. You get your stronger villains are often the more human ones. I think of Robert Redford in Winter Soldier, and that's because you can see that what he believes he's doing is right. It's not about world domination. It's about there's an agenda there. There's a genuine agenda, and that agenda exists because he believes it's the right thing. And I think whenever you put that in a villain, if you can present a villain, no matter how evil they are, no matter what they do, if you can present them in such a way that we know that they believe what they are doing is right, it makes them a much more intriguing villain, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so anything else to add to that scene?
No, not for that scene.
Okay, so Mulder prints off a resignation letter. He's basically going to jack it in. He's kind of given up the ghost, basically. His work's done, he feels. He's just resigning. And presumably he's handed it in. And we get Skinner coming down. He's packing up his office. Mulder's packing up his office, getting ready for Skinner to accept his resignation. Skinner actually comes down to the basement, to his office, and tells him that his resignation is unacceptable. And then he does so by telling Mulder this story. And it's the first time we get any real backstory to Skinner, where we get a sense of who he is as a person, what his story is, what makes him tick. Other than stuff that, we've read stuff into his character, but there's nothing we can be absolutely definite on until this point, I think. And he tells a story of when he was in Nam, and basically he was killed. And he looked down on his own body. He was kind of almost going up into the air, whatever you want to call it. But then he snapped back and he woke inside a body bag like a week later or whatever, a few days later, in a camp in Saigon or wherever it was. Yeah, and he just says that I'm afraid to look any further into it, and you are not. That is why your resignation is unacceptable. And it's at that point that Mulder figures that it was Skinner who gave him Cancer Man's location and neatly packaged those cigarettes up. But what do you think of this moment with Skinner then?
I think it's kind of tipping the scales. Before about it, I thought it was always like mutual respect, the ability to do a job, and he knew that Mulder was a good agent. Now I feel as if he's he knows that there's something else out there. He knows that Mulder's the one that can investigate these strange things, and he feels that he's a necessity. So you're starting to feel as if Skinner is slowly etching onto Mulder's side of the fence.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it, isn't it? It's just, and I think that's what this episode kind of deals with on the whole. It's people who believe, people who don't believe, and people who can't quite confront that belief. So you got Mulder and Melissa, who both have beliefs. Mulder doesn't necessarily share the beliefs that Melissa does, but he's just as open as she is, but in a different way. or any other time he is. It's not quite at the moment because of the place that he's in. And then you've got people like Scully and Skinner, who maybe do deep down believe in something. They've had experiences, but they can't face it. They don't want to dig deeper, as Skinner says. But Skinner is of the mind that actually, if there is someone out there who is willing to dig deeper, why not let them? Why not let them do what I'm too afraid to? And I think you see actually that Skinner has a lot of respect, a lot more respect than we may have even believed for Mulder as a result of that, because of the truth that Mulder chases. So I really like the scene. I think it fleshes Skinner out quite nicely, humanises him a lot more, I think. But okay. So from there we have X cornering Mulder. He gives him some plane tickets and tells him that the man responsible for Scully will be coming to search his house, and he needs to be there to execute terminal force. It's the only way the law will not punish these people. So he's basically saying, look, you need to kill this guy.
Yeah.
So it harkens back to the scene earlier in which he killed the guy, and it's basically him saying, look, you want to know what I know? You need to be prepared to do what I do. So go home, wait for this guy to show up, and kill him.
Yeah. It's a nice little phrase. I like the little phrase like terminal intensity. It's good. It gives Mulder a vent to like unleash his frustration and possibly become a person that he doesn't want to be, which is more for the viewers than anything else, I think. But it's curious, at this moment I'm kind of curious to see what's going to walk through that door, who's going to be the man that's behind everything. And you're so close to an answer.
Yeah, I think even if Mulder was there, to be honest, I don't think we'd get much of an answer. It'd be some generic hitman guy who works...
Krychek?
Well, could very well be, couldn't it? That would be interesting, actually. I'd like to believe it was Krychek, actually, given that we never get to see who it is. But yeah, Mulder sits in his home with the lights out, and Melissa calls round, says that Scully is weakening and that he should go to see her before the inevitable happens. And I think this is quite key to what's going on in this episode with Mulder, I think. He says he can't, and she has to go. She has a go at him, saying he needs to step out of the dark, tell Scully how he feels, so at least she will know. And I think that's really that's the juxtaposition, isn't it, of where Mulder is right now. Does he seek some version of justice / vengeance, or does he let that go in order to tell Scully how he feels, to let go of Scully, really,
I've got it here. I mean, it's obsession and revenge over compassion and closure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the big test here, the weight. And I mean, I think we all know roughly where it's going to go next. We know the kind of man that Mulder is, and when it's put as plainly as this to him, I think there only is one outcome. Yeah,
and it kind of makes me think about his sister as well. You know, we've had a lot of episodes where Mulder's sister, and we don't tend to like it because it's been crammed down our necks. But when you look at the relationship here between him and Scully and what's going on, you know, where this anger comes from, where this need to seek vengeance and justice comes from. This happened to his sister. You know, his sister was taken. And we don't get that in this episode. No one says, oh, Mulder, are you not just venting because this reminds you of your sister? But it is there. It's there as a presence. You can't help but feel it, I don't think. Just by virtue of what's going on. Like, if Mulder had the chance to to sit in a room and wait for the people who took his sister to come through it, you get the sense that he would. But he doesn't have the benefit of his sister being in a hospital bed somewhere, so that, as you say, he can get that closure. Here, he does have that. Scully is there. You know, her body is there. So he does have that opportunity to go and get closure, which he doesn't have with his sister. His sister, at this point, will always be that open book that may never be closed. Here, he can close this book, and I think that wins out in the end, obviously, because he goes to the hospital. But so yeah, Mulder goes to see Scully, and he says, "I don't know if my being here will bring you back, but I'm here." So and it does kind of leave open the question: is that what brings Scully back? Because
this is really the first time we've seen Mulder interact with Scully the entire time she's been in the hospital. Realistically, actually talk to her and sit down and spend some time with her. He's always kind of passing by her, talking to other people about what's wrong with her. And
he can't accept what is before him. He can't accept that Scully, this woman he loves, she steps away from death. He doesn't want to face that. So he's chasing around these faceless men and trying to seek vengeance. It's easier than facing up to the fact that this woman could very well die quite soon. So Mulder goes back to his apartment and finds the place absolutely ransacked. To be honest, when I first saw this, and even now when I watch it these days, I always think when he's going through that door, I'm expecting him to find nothing, like no evidence of anyone being in. That X was actually lying, that it was a test from X. But yeah, so he goes back to his apartment. Still
could have been Brian.
It still could have been, couldn't it?
He could have seen like Mulder leave the building and then ransacked it to make it look as if he missed his opportunity.
Or X could have hired someone to go to the place anyway, just with the intention of getting that guy killed. So Mulder just breaks down. So finally, he's had this catharsis of telling Scully how he feels. He comes home, and he just breaks down, starts crying, kind of drops to the floor. Which is quite a touching moment, I thought. It's kind of a moment of tenderness we rarely get to see from Mulder, I think.
It's a good moment, but then again, Mulder's had that closure, and you're like, he's broken because of Scully, not because he's missed his opportunity with the other man, the person that was in his house. I think it's a nice climax.
Definitely. So Scully is on the bed, and she's in a forest. So she's on a bed with a forest around her. We have all these noises of birds and things like that, and then things start to fade. So the forest starts to turn into the hospital, and a tree turns into like her IV drip, and the sounds of the birds kind of fade into hospital noises. And she wakes up. Mulder gets another phone call, and he has a really big, beaming smile on his face. And it's at this point where I literally, in my head, I could see your face watching this episode, and I could see you smiling along with Mulder. Scully's awake. Yes, she's back.
Thank goodness. Hallelujah. We've waited so long for this. I have anyway. I felt like it's been a long time coming, and it's just nice to see her get back up. But more than anything, I'm eager to get to the next episode now. I want to get back to normal, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. So Mulder goes to see Scully, who corrects her own mum, I should say, when she calls him Fox. So Mulder comes through the door. Scully's mum says, "Hey, Fox," and Scully's like, "Mulder, not Fox." idiot. Basically. So she says she had the strength of his beliefs, and he gives her back her cross, which is very symbolic given what she's just said. Scully asks a nurse if she can see Nurse Owens, and that nurse says there is no Nurse Owens. Oh no!
Again, that just it highlights Scully's ability to be intuitive towards supernatural things.
Mm-hmm.
I think it ties her into the family again, and just kind of, I don't know if it really affects other episodes, but again, she keeps getting all these episodes where little things happen to her and her alone. So again, I like that little twist at the end.
The things that happen to Scully tend to be of a spiritual nature.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They tend to be of like a God, existence of God, heaven, earth, angels, that kind of thing. That they tend to be the things that she's in tune with.
Yeah. I mean, it's done. Scully's back. Hip hip hooray.
Give us your wrap up of this episode.
My wrap up. At the start of this episode, so excited Scully was back, and I find myself almost bored by the melodrama that goes on in this episode. I was. It's like somebody's gave me something like my favourite meal. They've sat it in front of me. They've said everything's cooked to perfection. How does it smell? Great. How does it look? Fantastic. Cool. We'll take it away now. I can have my Scully, but I'm not allowed to fully experience her. It's like the ultimate tease, and I think it's a very explicit Mulder episode, even though Scully is at the heart of it, as Mulder comes to his emotional core and deals with certain things, and I think they're handled very well. Nurse Ratched, I'm not keen on. I don't know. There was just something about her that just put me off. Something weird. Of course, it's handled at the end, but also the episode I just felt a little bit odd about it. I like the aspect of X. I think he is an interesting character. I think Cancer Man is given even more menacing stature due to that scene in his own house with a gun against him, and he still owns that situation. Skinner's story, I don't know if I like that, because I did like the fact that Skinner always felt as if he could go either way on Mulder, and you were never sure if he was going to side with him or not, and this kind of takes that element away, because I imagine that he's going to be more on Mulder's side as it continues. But I kind of like the fact as if he was like right down the middle, and played that away. Still, it's a fairly decent episode. For me, it's a 3.5 out of 5.
Right. Okay. This is an episode that back in the day, around the time when I first watched it, I think I probably would have agreed with you. But in retrospect now, like when I revisit it now, it has a much higher place, I think, in my heart as an X-Files fan. And being able to go back and watch it, and like knowing where Skinner goes and just all that stuff. I just there's so many great scenes in here for me. The interaction between Mulder and Scully's sister, this rather odd pair of people, like both believers of a sort, but yet you kind of feel a tension between them that they probably wouldn't get on. I feel like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever had that where you know someone and you know you like them, you get on with them, but you don't get on with their sibling because they're just completely different. And it's like that. I don't really ever envision Mulder being best chums with Scully's sister. So that kind of dynamic I really like between those two. I think you're right in the sense that there is a lot of melodrama here, but I think that naturally comes out of the situation. You're talking about someone who's on death's door, they're on a bed, they've got the option of switching off the machine, and indeed that's what they do. And I think it's only natural that a certain level of melodrama comes out of that. But I think that's offset by some real kick-ass scenes, like the one with Cancer Man and like the stuff with X in the car park.
Yeah.
So for me, I do really like this one. I got to say, there's two moments in it I really don't like. That's the cigarette packet scene, really stupid. And I'm not overly keen on the performance in the opening scene of the girl who plays Scully. But beyond that, I do really like it. And I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5.
Cool. Okay. So next episode, Brian, is Firewalker. Give us a little insight into this episode.
I've only ever seen this episode once.
Wow. Right.
I missed it when it first aired on television. At the time, the X-Files, I used to go over to a friend's and we'd watch it on every whatever night it was it came out, and I couldn't go that particular week, and I had something else on, so I missed it. So I never got to see it until I got the DVD box set. I bought the DVD box set of it, or the video box set it probably would have been, to be honest. And I watched it, and I hated it. Just hated it. Yes, because I literally thought, this is just ice. It's literally the same episode as Ice, except I'm not as engaged with the characters, and all they've done is switched it from the coldest place on Earth to one of the hottest places on Earth. But it's essentially still the same thing. Little parasitic life forms in a remote location that cause people to get a bit paranoid and go up against each other. And Mulder and Scully get stuck in the middle of it all. And I just thought it's no way near as good as Ice. And I think I was a bit disappointed that the first episode we got back, where we got Scully back, and we get what is essentially just a rip-off of an episode we've already seen. So I've not seen it since then. So this watching it for the next X-Files podcast will be the first time I've seen it since.
Yeah. So there we have it, people. A ringing endorsement of the next episode of the X-Files 2. So rush back to hear Brian gushing over Firewalker. And we'll see you next time on the X-Files Revisited.